Hey, I'm firearms attorney Gilbert Ambler, and when I talk to gun owners and self-defenders, I always tell them that they need to take their goals in order, with goal number one being to stay alive, and goal number two being to stay out of prison. And today, I want to talk to you about some tips and tricks that might help you stay out of prison if you have ever been involved in a self-defense incident. In our last video, we talked about situations where people should not be calling the police on themselves. Today we're going to talk about when you should call the police, and if you do have to call the police, what should you be saying on that phone call. And I want you to stay tuned because I can tell you my advice differs just a little bit from some of the other advice that is out there. Before we dive into this, if you have not yet hit that subscribe button, go ahead, hit subscribe for us. Comment on this video, tell us your thoughts, like this, share this video on other social media platforms. That way you and your friends can keep getting this important Second Amendment related content. Let's start out by talking about when you should be calling 911. Because as I told people in the last video, which we can link to down below, far too frequently, people wind up calling the police on themselves unnecessarily. So my guidelines on when you should be calling the police are a couple-fold. Number one, we need to worry about your safety. Are you in a safe location to call the police? Now, I'm not telling anybody to leave the scene of the crime, but if you need to get yourself back into a locked vehicle or into another safe spot where you have a good vantage point, make sure that you prioritize your safety before pulling out a cell phone to make a 911 call, because that is sure to distract your attention. The second analysis is, should you be calling the police? And my advice on this, we group our cases into two categories. The first category is going to be situations where we virtually know that law enforcement are going to be involved either way. This category includes things like if you shot another person, if you shot somebody else, you can be virtually assured that there is going to be an investigation. Even if they never find a body, somebody's going to report that person missing. So the police are going to be focused on this. And of course, in the self-defense context, it's not typically a situation where someone's hiding bodies. So we expect this to be reported. I want you on record making a 911 call. You called for help. You called for medical attention. And again, we're going to talk in just a minute about what to actually say on that call. The second situation where we know there would be a police investigation, even if you didn't discharge the firearm, is a situation where you pulled out the gun to stop a threat and there were lots of other people. You were in a public spot, like in the aisle of a grocery store that had a bunch of women or old women or old men up and down the aisle. If there were a bunch of other people that saw you pull the gun out, even if the bad guy ran away, you can be virtually assured that one of those other people is going to call the police. Therefore, I want you on record. I want you making the 911 call. If, however, the situation is a scenario where the bad guy threatened you, you pulled gun on bad guy ran away, and we don't know whether anybody else saw this ordeal, my advice to you is to speak with an attorney. Because as I explained in that last video, frequently people feel like they have to call the police, and when the police show up, they don't know where bad guy is, but they have you saying you waved a gun around, they might arrest you. So talk to an attorney in advance in that scenario. Get advice on number one, whether you should contact the police, and number two, if you do contact the police, how you should be explaining this situation or letting your attorney explain the situation for you. That way what you say doesn't get used against you. All right, now let's talk about a situation where we have decided we need to call the police. For example, we shot bad guy, so we know there's going to be a police investigation. If you call 911, I cannot give you hardline rules for what to say because every scenario is different. There is absolutely no substitution for using your head when it comes to these scenarios. But I can give you some things to think about. Number one, 911, and you should all know this already, but 911 calls are recorded. Number two, the things you say can be used against you. And number three, someone is going to be asking you questions on that 911 call, trying to prompt you to talk, and they're going to try to keep you talking. So with these three basic things in mind, my advice is, as much as possible, limit what you say on a 911 call. If you shot somebody, here are four things I think you should say. Some of them sound incredibly basic, but they are nonetheless important. Number one, your name. Who are you? Identify yourself. I used to say give your name and a good description of yourself, and a dispatcher actually talked me out of giving a description of yourself. What the dispatcher said is, Gilbert, you've got to understand these are elevated level calls. And what that means is it means officers who might be doing traffic stops on the side of the road are going to drop what they're doing and sprint for a cruiser when they hear this 911 call come in. And if they're running for their cruisers and they hear a description cackle over the radio, they might assume that they are hearing the description of the bad guy. So this dispatcher said, Gilbert, just tell people, give them your name. You don't have to give them an additional description. I'll leave that up to you, but something important to think about. Number 2, also incredibly important, an address. Where are you? They have plenty of tools at their disposal to figure this out, but the fastest and easiest way will be if you give them an address. Number 3, 1,000-foot overview of what's going on and why you need their help without saying that you just shot somebody. Now, in the self-defense context, it is very likely that we will ultimately admit to police officers that you were the one, and admit to them through your lawyers that you were the one who did the shooting, but I certainly don't want you giving up that playing card on the 911 call. So 1,000-foot overview. There's been an attack, there's been a break-in, someone's been assaulted, some type of overview of why you need their help without saying you just shot somebody. And then finally, I want you to actually ask for police and at least 2 ambulances. And I want you to request 2 ambulances for both practical and legal reasons. The practical reason is that oftentimes in these scenarios, someone has been shot or has been stabbed when they make the 911 call and they don't yet realize it. And even if you haven't been physically injured, it's not uncommon for people to suffer heart attacks in the aftermath of a self-defense scenario. So I want you to get medical attention for yourself, but we certainly want medical attention for the other party, because our goal was not to kill them. Our goal was to stop the threat. And once the threat has been stopped, we need to make sure we've got medical attention on their way for them. That's a practical reason. The legal reason is this. I've been to the scene of more than one shooting where either a prosecutor or a representative of the prosecutor's office has showed up on the scene of the shooting. And in my experience with these situations, if you are not put into an ambulance, chances are you are going to be put into a squad car, at least until they straighten everything out. But when that prosecutor shows up on the scene and sees somebody sitting in the back of a police car, I think they immediately believe that that person is probably a guilty party. The converse is also true. If they show up and they see somebody sitting in the back of an ambulance, I think that they immediately assume that that person is a victim. You are a victim in these scenarios. That's why we want you to be recognized as such from the beginning and get yourself checked out. Get some medical attention for yourself, okay? Now, it's important that we still limit what we say, so after we get these basic things out of our mouth, if we can, I want you to hang up the 911 call. They're going to call back. You are under no legal obligation to answer those return calls. Now, I say if you can, because there might be some scenarios where you have to stay on the phone or where you have to give them additional information. For example, imagine bad guy broke into your house, you guys got into a shootout, and he ran out into the night. He's heavily armed, crazy person running around the neighborhood. Do you think it might make sense to tell responding law enforcement, to tell the dispatcher that there's a heavily armed crazy person running around the neighborhood? I certainly think that would be pretty important. So you still have to use your head. You might have to give them additional information, but if you can hang up the phone, it's critical that you do so, not only so that you don't voluntarily respond to questions, but also because we want to control what information is going out. And in this context, with that being a recorded phone call, even if you don't say anything stupid, the phone could still pick up things other people say. Imagine your spouse comes down the stairs and says, "Oh my God, did you have to kill him?" Well, do you think we want that played at your jury trial? I can certainly tell you we do not. So if you can hang up the phone, I encourage you to do so, okay? And ignore those callbacks. At that point, you need to call your lawyer and get some legal advice. I hope that you've enjoyed this video and that you find this video useful. If you did, go ahead, hit that subscribe button for us. Like this, comment, tell your friends. Until next time.